nobody's better than me. You know what I'm saying? They're no different than me. So if I knew what you knew, I could do it too. If I had the same resources, the same knowledge that you had, I can do what you're doing too. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. And that's just my belief, period. If I had the same training that you had, and you can be the finance officer over the VA, I don't care who you are. If I had the same training you had, oh, I could do it too. I just believe that. And then
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wealth in Christ podcast, a show where we inspire the masses to become financially free while building God's kingdom. On the podcast today, we have Ms.Felicia Streeter. Ms. Felicia is a government contracting strategist, and in this podcast, we'll be discussing how Ms. Felicia went from winning a $23,000 contract to now winning a $15 million contract in her years of experience. So thank you for being here, Ms. Felicia.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
How are you doing today?
I am great. I can't complain at all. Life is good.
That's really good. That's really good. So what led you to becoming a government contractor?
Well, I've always had the desire to have a business. And so what happened is my husband at the time was getting out of the military, and he was working for a company. And so that company actually introduced us to government contracting. So prior to that, no knowledge of government contracting at all. And just because he was working for the company, that's how we learned about government contracting. And it's really sad that a lot of people, a lot of companies still today don't know about government contracting and all the benefits that it has.
No, that's well said. And I want to ask, why do you think this is the reason why this business seems like it's almost a secret to most people, that they don't know about it?
I don't know. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. It's kind of like having a customer that you just never reached out to that customer. You didn't know that customer brought what you were selling, that kind of thing. So it's not, I guess it's not that it's really a secret per se, like it's being hidden, but it's just, you don't think that that's your customer. It's no different than if it was an individual and you're like, oh, they wouldn't buy my soap, or that kind of thing. They wouldn't use it.
That's well said. So how did you go about winning your first government contract? You can walk us through the steps and the resources that you took advantage of to win your first contract.
Sure. So my first government contract was as a prime contractor. So a lot of times that doesn't happen, but here's what happened for me. So getting into government contracting, and, again, you don't know what you don't know. And so I realized after that $23,000 year that something had to change. And so from what I knew at that point, I had to shift from being a subcontractor to going and sitting in the prime position. And then not only that, finding the sweet spot for my company with the resources and capacity that I had to get me there. And so what I did is, okay, let's look for some prime opportunities, meaning we're the prime contractor on the project. The government is our direct customer. Now, we didn't have the resources to do that or the experience at the level that we won the contract. So what we did is we partnered. When I say partner, I don't mean we partnered companies and created a new entity, but we teamed with this company and we went after this opportunity together. And the way we set the deal up and negotiated with them, we were able to use their resources to back us, to show that we had the capacity. When I say capacity, I'm talking about the cash flow. I'm talking about having the people, software, because, you got to do paperwork. And then bonding was important, in construction. So we partnered with a company that had the resources that we did not. And, we found a company that they were doing well in the private sector, but they weren't in the government sector. So it was a new opportunity for them, another way for them to generate cash flow. And for them, they were doing like 50, 100 million a year. So the little 15 million was nothing to them, but it was a lot to us. But what it did for them, they just looked at it as payroll money. So, it was just really finding a company that we could find something to offer them, and that's what it was. And so that's how we were able to put that deal together and get to that, $1 million contract.
That's well said. That's well said. And I want to break down a couple of things that you mentioned. You talk about being a subcontract versus a primary contract. What is the difference between being a subcontractor and being a primary contractor?
Sure. So if you're a subcontractor, that means you're working up under another company. So that means the government agency is not your customer directly. The government agency is not going to pay you, but that other company will pay you. Okay, so you're their subcontractor. Now, if you're the prime contractor, then the government is your customer. They will pay you directly. So any issues, any questions the government has, they will go to that prime contractor. And then if it needs to float down, the prime contractor would then talk to the subcontractor.
Okay, that's well said. And another thing that you mentioned, you're saying after you had a $23,000 a year, you realized that you want to go bigger. And in order for you to go bigger, you had to teamwork with another company who had a resource. And so how did that conversation start up, or the research you had to do to understand this will be the right company and this will be the goal that you're going after?
That's a great question. Never been asked that one before. So what we did is we went out networking. I think people are still networking today with COVID, but so in person, because, when you're in person, you can speed up the process, number one.
Yeah.
But what we did is we went out networking. And one of the things I tell my clients all the time is when we leave the house, we leave with a purpose. And we know where we're going. We know the objective when we get there. So we were strategic in where we went, looking at who would be there, because a lot of times when you go to these events, conferences, and things like that, the larger companies will be listed. They're going to showcase them. And so we did our research with the company, like, checking out their website, learning everything we could about various companies. And we narrowed it down to, I think, 3 companies, right? And so then we went where they were at, had the initial conversation, and with the one company where it went well, and, we piqued their interest in what we were telling them. And it wasn't a government event because, remember, they didn't know government contracting, but they were at a conference or something. And so we started the conversation there. And so one of the key things also is we did the research to see who is that key person that we can get in front of that has the ability to get to the owner. Right. So we had to make sure we were talking to the right person, basically. Either they would be the owner directly, or they had the ear, the trust of the owner, to where we could talk to them and then they go back and tell the owner, what's going on. And so what happened is we connected with the project manager of the company, and he was over all of the project managers of that company. So hence he was in direct line with the owner. And so he liked it and everything. And, he liked us. And I always tell people, when you're doing these type of deals, you want to get the warm and fuzzy in your gut. That's just how I do. So my gut has never steered me wrong to today. But when you have that, and we had that, amongst us, we were able to do really great things together.
That's well said. That's well said. And I want to, talk about, you say you drew the interest. So I'm sure, how did you, come up with the plan, how you're going to address the pitch that he's going to speak to this person. So you will draw their interest, the chances of them saying no would decline, will reduce.
Well, because remember, so we looked at the company, they weren't doing government work. They could do government work for sure with their eyes closed, but they didn't have an end. As a large company, they didn't have the advantages that we did as a small company. So as a small company and having resources, now we're limiting our competition. And really for us, when we entered the market back then, it was only like 4 other minority small companies that had bonding that we could bring. So when you think about that, so now it's 5 of us, okay? So 5 companies have bonding at, millions of dollars. So now what happens is, as opportunities come out, now remember, we still only have so much bonding. So once your bonding is tapped out, you can't do more work. So companies will eliminate themselves from opportunities because they're over here working on another project and their bonding is maxed out or their cash flow is maxed out. So even though it was 5 of us, 9 times out of 10, when we bid it on something, it was maybe 3 of us that could actually do it and had the, the time to do it, the resources, the bonding, cash flow, and all of that, and, people as well. And so when you show them like that, like, okay, here's this opportunity, the competition is really limited. And we have all the boxes checked as far as resources, we can do it. We have the complete package. They were, interested, because now it's like, okay, we don't really have to go out and do a lot of work because we're going to do the bidding, that kind of thing. And they just have to back us up as far as, having the resources and things like that. We performed on the project together. Another thing they liked is that we had experience in what we were doing. And so that we could self-perform some of the work. So we would have skin in the game as well, where a lot of times these small businesses, they want to partner with large companies and do things, but they don't bring anything to the table. And so I always tell people, and my clients particularly, that you have to know what you bring to the table when you're getting ready to negotiate these deals. And so at the end of the day, for us, even with them, it was all about creating a relationship that's mutually beneficial and outrageously profitable for both parties. We were totally transparent, both companies. So there was no guessing or wondering or anything or thinking somebody's doing something behind your back. Everything that involved both companies doing projects together, everybody had access. They could see what the money flow, everything. So there was no secrets, no nothing. And that made for a great relationship.
That's well said. That's well said. And I want to, have you explain, what is bond and federal bonding? I know.
Sure. So bonding is kind of like insurance. So think about, we all have to have car insurance, whether we use it or not, we have to have it. Okay. So when we're doing projects, sometimes it could be 100,000 or more, but definitely when you get into the $1 million contracts, you get into construction because of the risk factor, we have to have bonding. Now, some other industries have to have bonding too. So I always tell people, you know what you do, check and just, make sure if you need bonding, get it. So anyway, so bonding is kind of like insurance. They may say, okay, I'm going to give you a contract for $1 million and you have to bond this project. So what it means is basically just like car insurance. If something happens, the insurance will kick in. If something happens, the bonding will kick in. So if you're not able to perform for whatever reason, something happens, then they can go after your bond. If you don't pay your subcontractors, if they're tier 1, tier 2 subcontractor, they can go after your bond. So it's like insurance, really. And so on projects, what happens is you may have to have a bid bond sometimes. And so that bond, it covers the bidding. So saying that, okay, if I bid this and I win it, I can do it, that kind of thing, because you're wasting the government time if they award it to you and then you can't do it. So a bid bond. Sometimes you have a performance bond. A lot of times you'll have that. So that's just making sure you perform on the project. If not, they can, tap into your bond, the resources they lose, the time they lose, they can pull from that and, pay someone else to do it. And then also payment bonds is sometimes required to make sure you pay your subcontractors.
No, that's definitely well said. And another thing I wanted to ask, with your partnership with this company is like, you said that, you had to make sure it was profitable for both parties.
Right.
So what was the split that you was comfortable or you would suggest people to be comfortable with going to a bigger company to have that kind of resource?
So it depends. There's no exact percentage because you have, each deal is different. So we didn't have a standard percentage. We looked at each opportunity individually to see what resources each company was bringing to the table. So ideally, the company that brings the most resources should get more of the profit. But here's the thing, the profit, because you're talking about percentage, so I'm assuming you're talking about the profit at the end. Yeah. So that's after all of your expenses are paid. Now we're talking about even if it was a 50-50 split, you're doing it on the profit after everything is paid. That means the project is completely closed out. And now here's what we have left. And when I say closed out, that means everybody has been paid. And so you may split it 50-50, or say one company is bringing bonding, which is huge. maybe they're bringing cash flow, the money to fund it until the project floats itself. So you may do a 70-30 split. But again, it's at the end of everything being paid. So you're splitting the profit 70-30. Now, what I always suggest for my clients as small businesses, this is why you want to make sure you can self-perform some of the work, because now if you do a 70-30 split on the profit, you still make all the money off of your self-performing pieces of the project. So that's why it's important to be able to self-perform as well, because remember, you still get to bid and get your markup on that piece that you're doing. Yeah,
that's well said. And I guess my next question is, what would you say are five things people need to have in place before they start bidding on bigger contracts, $1 million, $5 million, and so on? What's things that they have to have in place so those offers and opportunities they can take advantage of?
Sure, that's a great question. I'm actually in the midst of, I was planning out some videos for the coming weeks, and one of those is getting your $1 million year as a government contractor. So great question. So a few of the things I always say, so if I had a company and say they're transitioning from the private sector into the government sector, they're probably already doing projects in the private sector. They're fine, they're making money, that's cool. But when we get into government contracting, they also have requirements that you need to meet. So one, to be qualified to bid on a project and be awarded that contract, you have to be registered with the government. So there's SAM registration if we're talking about federal contracts. Now you can still do state, local, county government contracts as well. And if you're going to do those, then you have to be registered with those particular agencies. So just know, if you are doing several counties, you may have to register with several counties unless they combine their systems. You would have to check. If you're doing multiple states, then you're going to have to register in multiple states. The only one that is one system is the federal government, and that's your SAM registration. So you would do your SAM registration. If you're a minority-owned business, a small business, a woman-owned small business, a service-disabled veteran small business, you want to make sure you apply for all the certifications for which you qualify. If your business is in a hub zone, you want to, apply for that hub zone certification as well. And then there's the 8A program. And I don't usually talk about that too much with people just getting into government contracting because they're not ready for that certification yet, but you have that certification as well. So the gist of it is apply for all the certifications for which you qualify. And so you do that. And then the next thing is preparing. You want to look at your capacity. Look at your capacity, because that'll tell you what opportunities you can start looking at. Who's your customer in the government market that's putting out opportunities that match the capacity that you currently have. So when I say capacity, I'm talking about looking at your bonding limits, making sure you have the insurances that you need to have, making sure you have cash flow to float a project until it can float itself, meaning until you start receiving payments on those projects. So you want to make sure you have that. And then also having people, if you need equipment and things like that, making sure you have everything you need to perform on the project. And then also you may need funding. A lot of times people get grants confused with being a government contractor and bidding contracts for a profit. Those are two totally different things. So if you need money, then you have to look at funding options, whether you're going to use your credit cards, get a personal loan, a business loan, whatever that looks like. You can do factoring as well. That's another option. Total transparency, I never use factoring, but if that's something you want to use, that's another option. So you need to have your money together as well. And then the last thing is you need to understand government contracting. You have to be able to read those solicitations, break them down, pull out the requirements, and then write a proposal to that solicitation and scope of work that they're asking for. And so if you're able to do those things, then you can get into government contracting and be really successful.
No, that's well said. And I guess, I want to talk about the funding part that you mentioned. You talk about different things that you have to put in place, the people, the bonds, the insurance, all these different things. So how much would you say is needed to, actually get started and be successful in this business?
So it depends on what you're doing. You could have someone that they're doing professional training and development. So they probably already have all of the equipment they need, which is probably just their computer or something like that. So they don't need equipment. The only thing they may have to do is fly to the location if it's not local or something like that. Excuse me. And so with that, just depending on how they're being paid and what the scope is, because they may create the curriculum, send it over, and at that point they pay them and then they come deliver. So it depends, but the cost could be minimal. Now, if you're doing a product, for example, depending on what your arrangement is with your vendor, it would entail how much money you need, right? Your vendor may give you net 30, net 60, net 90 days, you never know. And so if they gave you, say, for example, net 90 days and you deliver to the government, usually in about 30 days max on your first opportunity, them getting you into the system and all of that, you'll be paid. So then you really didn't have to front any money on that. We get into construction, it's a little bit different. Of course, there's a lot of moving parts, and you're going to have to front, of course, because you have to get your bond if bonding is required. So you're going to have to pay for your bond. And that is a relative number based on the project, because the bonding is based on how much the project is awarded for. So if it's a $10 million contract, then you're going to need a $10 million bond. And the price of it is based on your credit and percentage or whatever you have with the bonding company. So it just depends. Of course, you'll have to have your general insurances that you may need. So, but you usually carry that anyway. And then getting boots to the ground to get the project started. If it's out of state, then you're going to have travel costs as well, per diem for people staying out there if you're using people that's not local. And then whatever materials you need to have to get the project going. But here's the thing, a lot of times when we're in construction, we put boots to the ground, we can go ahead and start invoicing the government for the bond, for the insurance, and for getting materials dropped on site. Okay, and so we can invoice like that. And then, sometimes you're able to get net 14 days, meaning from the time you invoice the government, they get it, it's complete, they pay you in 14 days. So it is, yeah. So it just depends. It just depends.
That's well said. And I want to ask, why, out of all the different kind of government contracting, that you chose construction to stay with construction?
Well, that's because, remember at that time, so I was married. So my ex-husband had construction experience. I had the business experience. So it was just easy to get into that. We still do construction today because it's very lucrative for sure. But I also do professional training and development. So even though I work with other businesses, teaching them how to get into government contracting, win their first contract, get to that $1 million a year as a government contractor, and then on to those $1 million contracts and multiple year contracts. I work with the government and other corporations and things as well, as far as doing professional training and development around government contracting and even leadership development for those people that are going to be leading teams or leading their company.
That's well said. And one thing I definitely want to add, I know you mentioned a lot, is cash flow. Being able to have that cash flow to front the project, specifically with construction. Why is that so important to have cash flow? Because
so think of construction. Okay, so with construction, usually, I don't care whether you're doing tenant finish out, remodeling a building, or building it from the ground up, you need materials. Materials cost. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you need people to do it. People want to be paid. Okay, so if we even took away the bonding, insurance, and all of that, we still have to pay people, and we have to pay for materials. And even if you have them as employees, or say you have subcontractors, either way, you still have to pay them. So you want to have some cash flow, because depending on what your agreement is with, say, subcontractors as to how often or when you're going to pay them, then you may need that money in place to do that. Not only that, just think about it, going back and forth to the site, that's gas, that's money. Right now, gas is pretty high. Or if you have to travel to the location, maybe get on an airplane. So now we're talking an airplane, a hotel room, a car, all of, those type of expenses. So you have to have that in place. And then the unknown. What if the government pays not on schedule because, and I say on schedule because they pay on time, but if you don't give them what they ask for, they can't pay you. And small businesses is notorious for not sending what they're supposed to so that they can get paid. And then they want to fuss back and forth about, well, I sent you this, but that's not what they asked for, and so it can be held up sometime. So you just want to make sure, you have some money to float the project until it can float itself. And then you may need to pay yourself as well, so you still have to live and eat and take care of your family and all those things as well until the project starts receiving payments.
That's definitely well said. That's definitely well said. And I want to ask, what were some challenges you faced, once you got into government contracting?
Well, so sitting in the subcontractor position, getting paid. There was this Christmas where we were supposed to get paid and we did not. And so, just starting out, we're dependent on that check, like we're contract to contract, check to check, and we didn't get it. And so, it was a decision had to be made. Do we get some of the kids a Christmas gift? Because everybody wasn't getting one. That was just the bottom line, because we had a baby and he needed diapers and milk too. Okay. So it's just the reality, but who wants to be in that place and space? And so that was one of the reasons that said, okay, we have to do something different. This is definitely not working. And then, just being a subcontractor, you're up under a prime contractor. And, it's just, if you can, for me personally, and you have the capacity to do it, to sit in the prime position, because you just control things more. You control the money flow. So you're going to, of course, you're going to pay yourself. So you're going to get paid on time and on schedule, things like that. But your profit margins are higher as well, because you're the prime contractor. So you control a lot of that. And so, just doing it that way is really what, yeah, we had a lot of subcontractor horror stories. Another thing is where sometimes you get with prime contractors and they want to nickel and dime you when they get down to closeout, because they're trying to hit their numbers as far as profit margin. And so now they want to beat up their subcontractors and start taking money from them and finding reasons to do that so that they can hit their numbers, which is really, really sad, but it happens. And so those are a few of the reasons why, we got out of the private sector, went into government contracting, because the government is looking for us and they have money. So you don't have to chase them down to get paid.
That's well said. That is definitely well said. And that leads me to my next question, fate. Doing that challenge, I can just imagine that Christmas, it was challenging to whether to decide whether or not you're gonna get all the kids gift, take care of the new baby, get the milk and everything that sort. So like, how does your fate, play a role in your growth, from making that winning that $23,000 contract to now dealing with millions and multi-year contracts?
Right. So I think for me personally, it goes back to just being a little kid. My father always told me I could have whatever I want. I had the ability within me to do whatever. And I always believed if I saw other people doing things, like nobody's better than me. You know what I'm saying? They're no different than me. So if I knew what you knew, I could do it too. If I had the same resources, the same knowledge that you had, I can do what you're doing too. I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is. And that's just my belief, period. If I had the same training that you had, and you can be the finance officer over the VA, I don't care who you are. If I had the same training you had, I could do it too. I just believe that. And then, with faith, I just believe, for me, I just believe if I want it, I can have it. I'm a child of God and he gives us what we want. If we ask for it, we can get it. So I always say you have not because you ask not. And so I always tell people, yeah, I mean, whatever I want, I get it. If I ask God for it, I get it, but I mean, on the other hand, I don't be asking for crazy stuff either. Like, so I'm still walking the right way with God to be able to ask for things that are, correct. And then I just believe he doesn't put anything on my heart or desire of something that I want and then to say, no, you can't have it, because then he wouldn't allow it to be in my heart to want it anyway.
No, that's definitely well said. And I want to go back to something talking about expenses, in terms of government contract. As you know, there's been rumors and people talking about recessions and price of gas going up, as you mentioned. So how has that, affected business of any chance, or how have you pivot, to prepare for a recession? And how are you teaching people to pivot to prepare for a recession?
So great question. So let me tell you, this morning, I said, Alexa, when was the last recession? And so Alexa said the noted last recession was, I think it said 2007 through June of 2009. So I said, and I was just telling my daughter this morning at the gym, and I said, and I told her, I said, that was when we were on the uprise with the construction company during a recession. So even though we were in a recession back then, I guess I did not know, because we were on the rise. Okay, yeah. That's when we hit millions in government contracts during that time. And so what it made me believe is, okay, we may be going into a recession. It's possible, but the government is still buying and spending. Just like it did that time, it's going to continue to do this time. And I told people that even when we had the COVID shutdown and everything, the government didn't stop buying. They still have to build, and construction didn't shut down either. If you think about it, construction didn't shut down, hospitals didn't shut down, people still have to live. Well, think about military installations. They're self-sufficient. You can shut down a military installation and people can live on there forever. They have the grocery store, they have schools, they have recreation for the kids, they have the hospital, everything is there. So my point is, we may be heading into a recession. I don't know, but the government is still going to have to perform as such. The military is still going to have to perform as such. They're not going anywhere. And so what I'm trying to get my clients to understand is, one, and those that are in my community, they may not be a client, but if you're thinking about government contracting, get in it. And they always say, well, when is a good time? Now. Because it's going to take you time to get registered. Remember, I talked about the SAM registration, getting your certifications. So you need to lay that foundation so you're ready for these opportunities. Now, preparing for a recession, however it may hit, just in general terms, we look at our expenses. Where can you tighten up? My company, any company I have, we always run lean anyway. So I don't carry a lot of expenses to begin with, and just stuff we don't need. Because I have an accounting background too. So, I like to watch the money, but so we don't carry extra things that we don't need. So watching your expenses, watch your spending moving forward, and be mindful of saving money, and also looking at your profit margins. Is there ways to increase that? Is it ways to increase your pricing to make more money? So those are the things I will look at. And even people, if you have people on your team and you're not using them, unfortunately, as a business owner, we have to make the decision sometimes that we have to fire people, lay people off, and things like that. That's just a part of doing business, and it's very hard to do. I've had to do it in the past, but this is how we have to look at it. I got 10 employees. And maybe we're looking at the numbers, we're going into recession, let's say, whatever. And we have to decide, okay, you know what, really these two people, because we closed out those last projects, we don't really need them. And so instead of paying them to sit in the office, because in construction, if you're sitting in the office, we're not making money. So instead of having them do that, and we continue to pay them, which is draining our bottom line, we may have to let them go, because if we don't let those two go, we may have to let everybody go, so you can't let the whole ship sink if you can prevent it. And unfortunately, that's where you lay off some people sometimes. And it's hard when you've been on the other side as an employee. We understand the gist of how business is, and what a paycheck means to somebody and things like that, and them being able to take care of their family. So it's a very hurting feeling anytime we have to lay somebody off. I mean, it's hurtful for us too, because we know the impact of that.
Well, no, that's well said. And I just need to ask, as we're preparing or, going, if we do go into recession, would you advise people to build a bit smaller or continue to bid larger, based on their capacity?
Oh, no. The government's going to have it all. If you have capacity, go for it. Definitely go for it. The larger the project, the larger the profit margins. So yeah,
Well said.
I say go for it.
Well said. And what would you say are 5 habits of successful government contractors?
So 5 habits, let me see. So 1 is definitely doing your marketing. So you have to market. You need to know who's your customer. You need to be looking at the forecast. You need to be doing business development. So doing something to generate new leads, new business coming in, and then looking for opportunities to partner with other companies. That way you increase your capacity.
That's definitely well said. And I want to ask this question, as I'm thinking about it right now. In terms of technology, with government contracting, you deal with different subcontractors and those are people. How do you see technology, affecting government contracting in the future in terms of replacing people, jobs and things of that sort?
Depends on what it is. It's probably possible to some degree, because it's just like computers and, things they do now. So it's probably possible. Construction, probably not so much. In certain areas, probably not so much, but I can see it in certain areas, maybe. But again, understand government contracting. Congress sets budgets every year, and they have percentages within those budgets that they want to give projects to woman-owned small businesses, service disabled veteran small businesses. I said woman, minority, and minority businesses. I said woman, service disabled vet, minority. So they have these categories and they have the percentages already set. So if you think about it, when we say technology, you look at it, how many small businesses will have access to that type of technology. So those contracts and things like that would be for larger companies anyway. And so it wouldn't affect the small business community. And I think that's something that people don't understand with government contracting. They have set asides for small businesses, meaning they set aside contracts for only small businesses, woman-owned. And so that means if you're not a woman-owned small business, you can't even bid that contract. So it automatically limits the competition for you as well.
That's well said. That's definitely well said. And right now, you're winning bigger contracts, you're a longer contract. So how would you basically? I want to ask you 2 questions. First I want to ask, what's your day-to-day like? Be doing this for almost 15 years. What's your day-to-day like? What are some responsibilities you still take on, and what's some responsibilities you delegate to people?
Sure. So of course it's not like it was back then. It's changed. Because back then I did everything besides nail in the screw or the nail. Okay. So anything office, I did it. But today it's more about the business development, looking for opportunities, building those relationships. And then, I still manage the finance portion. So I'm over, our accounting people, things like that. So although we have people do it, I oversee that. So, as you grow, as you bring on people, your role will minimize, but that's where the focus has to go more so on the business development. So instead of having to work in the day-to-day of the business, be in the office all the time, I'm out building relationships, because those relationships turns into contracts, turns into those teaming relationships. Yeah.
That's definitely well said. That's definitely well said. And that just leads me to ask, what are some opportunities that people or resources that you have available that people can take advantage of to learn more about government contracting?
Sure. So I have free resources and I have paid resources. So free resources is definitely my website, which is FeliciaStreeter.com. I'm sure you'll share that. But that's my website. I have a blog, and those blogs have videos, which leads to my YouTube channel as well, which you can search me on YouTube, Felicia Streeter as well. And I teach a lot about government contracting. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube, so you can binge watch like you do Netflix if you want to. And then I have a free resource on my website where I tell people about generating those leads. So if you want to be a 6-figure government contractor, and, generate those leads, do some business development. I have a free resource on my website where I teach that. And then I also have a course that I walk you through the 5 phases of government contracting to get you from where you are to your first government contract. And the phases, I'll just go ahead and tell you, is position, perform, profit, partner, and pace. So if you go through those phases and do those things, that'll get you to the finish line of winning your first government contract, get you to 6 figures. And then I also have where I work with clients privately, one-on-one, as well as I have a group program, which is my Government Contractor Accelerator program. And that's where we're getting to $1 million a year as a government contractor. And then I have my next level government contractor, and that's where we're doing multiple year contracts and $1 million contracts.
Wow. That's
all of that is on my website. Yeah, you can find it on my website.
That's pretty dope. And where do you see yourself in the near future, next 5 to 10 years?
So ideally, I would say, retired, like theoretically retired, but I enjoy what I'm doing. Is not hard. So probably not, maybe scaling back a little bit, but definitely still doing the teaching. My passion is teaching and training. If nothing else, I'll do that until I can't do it probably. And so, yeah, I love teaching and training. It's always been my passion.
Okay. Would you consider ever selling your construction business to anyone?
I doubt it, because not as a first choice, because I have kids. Yeah. And so they're entrepreneurs too. They've been in the business as well. So it would probably go to them.
Okay, that's good. So I guess my last question is, how did you start to get your kids involved in a business? Well, because,
so when we started the construction company, my youngest child was 2 months. Yep, 2 months. And so, it's family, right? We're doing it together at the time, me and my ex-husband. So it's just us, we're doing it. So kids come along, they're there, they saw everything. And so, construction is everywhere. If it made dollars, it made sense. We went. So sometimes we were in other states doing projects, and we're there for a couple of weeks. Well, guess what? They have to come too. So they were in the midst of it. They saw it all. And then as they became teenagers and young adults, then they worked in the company as well. Now they all have their own businesses, which is great. So they're entrepreneurs as well, but they all started and, they saw that. And so, yeah, we have, kids that they could definitely take over when the time comes.
And I just want to ask this last question. How do you go about separating business from your personal life? It's like you're very family orientated. So how do you make sure that you don't get consumed by either one and both side of the party is satisfied?
It was never a problem, I guess, and it probably still wouldn't be technically, especially when you're both in it, right? So we're both in it. We're doing the exact same thing. We have the exact same goal. And it's funny because if you come to any gathering where it's my kids and their immediate family, like their spouse or whatever, we're talking business more than likely. And we all have different businesses at this point, right? My kids are not in our business, but we're going to talk about business at some point because it's just who we are and what we do. So we don't have to separate it per se because we all understand it. And that's the great thing where, how you need a mastermind or another business person to bounce an idea off of. I can just pick up the phone and say, call my daughter. We all have our areas of expertise. And so, call them and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? So that's the great thing. And really, we haven't had to separate the two. What I will say, when you have a family that's in business together, especially a husband and a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, your roles need to be defined clearly, because that's where the problem will come in. It won't be like you're spending too much time because you're both probably spending time in it. But when you're moving into somebody else's lane and this is their area of expertise, and this is the area where they should be making that decision. And if you don't have those defined lines, that's where the problems come in. So for example, for us, if it dealt with project managers, superintendents, or something out on the project, and they came and asked me, I sent them right back to my ex-husband. That's his area, not mine. So if you need something clear, whatever, you need to go to him. Now, the only time I would probably step in is if, our workers are on the project and they're making us look bad, then we're both going, because now we're both upset. That's a whole different thing. If it was something with accounting, an invoice, something like that, then they would come to me. That was my area. I made those decisions. So having those defined lines of responsibility is so important to keep everybody happy.
That's well said. That's well said. I definitely want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your opportunity. This opportunity. If you could have any closing words for someone who was on the sideline and thinking about doing government contracting, what would you say to this person?
I would say get in the game. Get in the game. The government is the biggest spender in the world with small businesses. They have money. They pay on time. You don't have to chase them and find them. You have a smaller base of agencies, meaning clients that you'll work with, versus trying to work with 50 or 100 to get to $1 million. You could work with one and get $1 million. So now you don't have to have all these relationships out there. But in addition to that, I would say government contracting, what I see happen for my clients and for myself, is whatever you desire. You want a business that will support you personally, support your business, and be able to do the things that you want and have that freedom and flexibility that we all desire. Government contracting is the place to be. Yes, it'll take time for you to get your business set up, but that can go as fast as you can go. And I always tell people, whatever it is you desire, you're just one contract away from whatever that is. One contract is a game changer.
That's well said. And where can people stay in touch with you?
So you can stay in touch with me. I'm on YouTube. So again, you can visit me there. If you want to talk to me personally, I'm on Instagram. You can DM me over on Instagram. You can go to my website. There's a contact button. You can contact me that way via email. And my contact information is on the contact page as well. So phone number, email address, all of that. And yeah, I'm on social media. I hang out and I talk to people.
Thank you very much, Ms. Felicia. And for those who are listening, I hope you guys don't take it as another episode, another podcast. I hope this inspires you to actually go and do something. Don't be fearful, actually get the work done. And if you're looking for a community of Christians who are working on reaching financial freedom without compromising their faith, look no further and join the Pray and Invest group on Facebook. You can just search it on Facebook. You can definitely join. And stay tuned for the next week's episode. And thank you again, Ms. Felicia.
Thank you so much. You guys have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you.